some of these half-cent projects, they are fixing the drainage first. And we've heard from Mayor Tecklenburg that with the Glen McConnell widening, they are fixing the drainage first. Okay, there is also a half-cent project at the intersection of Riverland, Central Park. And we've met with Mayor Tecklenburg and discussed with him how important it is to fix the drainage first. There's so much development on the Central Park corridor. I know you've met with Franny Henty and others. It's a serious, serious issue. So whatever pressure that we can get on the county level from Representative Cunningham to fix the drainage first, and obviously the James Island PSD has a huge project that we're all paying for, but we can't continue the unbridled development along the Central Park corridor, and they're rushing as fast as they can because the city's going to revise building regulations and stormwater regulations. So there's this huge rush to develop, and the drainage has to be fixed first. So, I'm so glad that Franny is now looking at, on the federal level, what y'all can do to help us, because this is a safety issue, this is a clean water issue, this is a livability issue, and it's serious.
Thank you very much, Ms. Milliken. I really appreciate your input. Yes, sir. Oh, sorry.
My name's John Robinson, my wife Nancy. We live on James Island Creek in Creek Point subdivision at the very upper ends of the creek. And we've lived over there since 1985. It truly is sad that where my kids used to be able to swim out off the dock in the back of my place, and my dog could swim, and dolphins would come up in there, and you could actually fish and crab there, all that's gone. I mean, and I've seen it personally firsthand, degradation year after year, insult after insult onto the creek. And it's really galling that, in fact, that nobody is here, I guess, from CPW today, Commissioner of Public Works. My questions really revolve around Plum Island and how much capacity can Plum Island possibly take on year after year. I mean, I assume they're pumping sewage from Daniel Island to Plum Island. I assume they're pumping sewage from Mount Pleasant and Sullivan's Island and Isle of Palms and God knows where, I mean, from everywhere. It's all coming to Plum Island. So I think the first thing you need to have is somebody in an engineering capacity talk to people and say, how much can Plum Island possibly sustain? They're digging deeper holes at Plum Island. They're boring straight down and filling them up. And then the most insulting thing I think I saw was in a recent news article where they said, well, it's those dirty people on James Island and their dog poop that's polluting the creek, the dog feces runoff. I said, I wanted to go grab somebody and choke them. That was a CPW representative that said that actually at a public meeting. It's us dirty, nasty people over on James Island. I have a dog and I pick it up in the yard and I put it in a trash container and I contain it. And I do it on a diligent daily basis. And so do my neighbors. They don't leave it in the ditch, they pick it up. So I think that a start is having an understanding of how much capacity can one place possibly take. And they're putting all these pipes in from hither and yar. I think they probably need to be funded and put a pipe into James Island Creek and start pumping seawater from offshore and flushing the creek to try and clean it out.
Yes.
So if I had a recommendation, bring a pipe from 5 miles offshore and put it at the top of James Island Creek and push the water out and pump it and put a pump station in. They got plenty of pump stations to pump the poop. They need something that's pumping clean water in to get the poop out of the creek.
Yes.
I just think, I appreciate y'all calling this meeting and that you're taking notes.
So the federal issue would be the Clean Water Act, which there was an article this morning, I haven't had a chance to read it yet, about some of the proposed rollbacks from the administration on that Clean Water Act, and obviously that's something that the congressman is going to oppose. We're going to strongly encourage the Clean Water Act to stay in effect. Plus, some of the land, when it becomes tidal marsh, is EPA and federally protected. But like Senator Senn said, a lot of it is going to be the James Island PSD, DHEC, that's going to be the ones that are going to need to provide the solutions.
Okay,
So the onus would be on the state.
I'm sorry, if we're gonna use the Clean Water Act, who is it that would we're gonna have to basically file suit or do something to try and invoke it. So that's not something that your office could do, is it?
No, that's not something that our office does, but it, you know, some of the environmental groups, like the Southern or South Carolina Environmental Law Project, they're certainly looking into that.
Scalp,
SCELP, yeah.
they've
SCELP.
contacted me.
Mhm. That's something that they don't want to do that, you know, they'd rather have it, come to a different solution, something that, you know, that the community can come up with together. But yeah, that's certainly something they keep in their back pocket, but it's, you know, the legal system does not move very quickly, as we all know. So it could be years while they're trying to figure that out, unfortunately. One other thing I needed to mention, before we started, we often get constituents that come to these that need help with a federal agency, or I do have privacy release forms over there. If you're here for something other than the sewage and waste issue here, just you can talk to Antonio, our intern, over there, and if you need help with a federal agency, please fill out that privacy release form, and we'll be happy to help you out with that.
Just a quick question. So due to the rollback on the Clean Water Act, right now, our developments or development proposals that are going in on wetlands must seek and obtain DHEC permits on their stormwater plans. Is it your understanding, or do you know if with the Clean Water Act rollbacks, when we build now, or when developers build now in the Low Country, they will not need to seek DHEC approvals for stormwater
I
plans?
haven't seen what President
Okay.
Trump's the breakdown of what he's anticipating, trying to do. Obviously, I don't think any of us that live here would want.
But right now,
to
we have
listen to
a
speakers.
very important layer of approval with DHEC engineers looking very, very closely at these plans to disturb our important wetlands. So if you could let the congressman know, it is critically important that we not lose that layer of approval process, which of course delays development, and so developers and builders don't like that.
Yeah, Ms. Honeycutt, do you mind telling the audience what you told me earlier about some of the statutory?
The anticipated changes. The General Assembly just enacted the 2018 International Residential Code, which is the new building code. It is a uniform standard. We adopt those jurisdictionally, so you have to wait for the state to adopt it for each county and municipality. We anticipate the city would do the same, so that the building standards are the same. Those do address for the first time the concept of fill and build. And so we hope that we'll be able to address through those code modifications that issue. Also, we have the resiliency element coming out, which will provide a framework for council to adopt ordinances that will enhance resiliency. That would include addressing flooding issues and certainly anything attendant to that. So I would really encourage everybody to look at that proposal that was presented at our last meeting.
Does it look like that will pass, council?
I believe so.
Okay.
I don't think
There's
there's any
no-
opposition at this point. I
Okay.
think the main concern was putting the cart before the horse. When we adopted the new FEMA maps, we were gonna make some building ordinance changes, but putting those in front of the 2018 IRC adoption and the resiliency element was a little out of sync. So those came off the table, but I anticipate as we adopt the resiliency ordinance, we'll be looking more at, for our comp plan, we'll be looking more at how we can actually implement those through targeted ordinances.
Okay, thank you.
And is this fill and build, is this a county ordinance?
This
That
is
you're
where we
talking
get
of?
into the jurisdictional issues. I mean, the main issue with the cluster is that that's a city project. The county has virtually no input into what design elements, with the exception of the output or outfall into the East Wimbledon Canal, which we would have to approve because we have that easement. But when you have jurisdictions that have different standards, you run into these problems.
Oh,
You've got
exactly.
one neighborhood that's got one, elevation standard or fill and build standard, then you got, the people that have been there forever. So what we're trying to do is streamline those issues. So I've worked with Senator Senn and Councilmember Jackson and the rest of the James Island intergovernmental groups' efforts to try to streamline all of that so that as we go forward, we have a uniform policy of when we're gonna allow what to be developed where.
Well, on Monday, the city has already published the new stormwater. They put those up, and there is nothing about fill and build, and it's on the agenda to be passed on Tuesday to not include anything on fill and build. And that's this Tuesday.
That, and I don't know, I haven't read their stormwater regs, but the construction elements, which is the building code, they will have to apply by those. So sometimes these regulations can be confusing because there's sort of different silos, but the building code ordinance will require that to be addressed.
And that will require that the city of Charleston
Correct,
addresses
because they're gonna
stormwater.
have to adopt by state law, the 2018 IRC.
Thank you very much for that. Yes, ma'am.
Yes, I'm Henrietta Martin, and I live at 1235 Hepburn Street. That's on James Island on Fort Johnson Road. And where I live, it has a manhole right in front of my where I live. And the last time we had that heavy rain, it did not saturate the water itself. The rainwater itself did not do any harm to my street. However, from the manhole, all of that sewer just backed up into my yard. I mean, my yard, it was covered with, I mean, it looked like a pool. And right now, I'm still sick. I'm having respiratory problems from it. I got out of bed today to come here, just to let you all know that it's not healthy. It's been bothering me. It happened before, and it's happening, and it's getting worse. And it's something really need to be done.
This was the rain event on the 23rd of December?
Yes,
Okay.
yes, I have a photo, I have pictures of it, and you can hear,
Yeah, I'd love,
Oh,
if you
yeah.
could send
Oh,
those stuff, that'd be
oh yeah,
wonderful. Thank
it's
you.
horrible.
Ma'am, are you in the city or county?
I'm in the county,
County?
yes,
It's 1235 Hepburn, is that right?
1235 Hepburn Street.
Is there someone from the PSD here? I invited them all.
The PSD should be.
Would y'all like me to just maybe update you on what I'm doing on my end?
Sure, please. send it.
Great.
Please do.
Thank you. And I appreciate y'all coming, but
Of
that's
course.
why I was trying to point out, that from a federal level, there's not all that much that Congressman Cunningham can do effectively, because almost all of this is gonna be controlled locally. From a state level, yes, I can have input with DHEC, and I can try to get funding, which is what I'm doing right now, especially with funding, because, you know, we have an excess budget this year, so I'm doing my best to, you know, elbow other people out of the way. I think Charleston County's biggest request, though, is gonna be getting the hospital area fixed by MUSC, because that's considered a statewide need. And so I have definitely given my blessing to getting some funding there. But there are several things I'm doing based on our cross-jurisdictional task force. And for those of y'all who don't know what that is, it's a task force that has county, PSD, city, and DOT comes to the meetings, but so far DOT has not come with any money. And what they are doing is taking a high-level look at ways to improve James Island overall, not just, you know, a piecemeal approach. They did a very expensive study at the cost of those three entities that I mentioned, and identified, I think it was 21, somebody may correct me if I'm wrong, areas that definitely need approval and help, but we don't have that kind of money in the foreseeable future. So what I think was determined, which I think is good, was you had people working together from all those different entities, and they all agreed on one area, which is going to be underneath Dills Bluff Road, and it basically impacts a lot more houses, unfortunately, than Central Park Road, but it impacts a lot more houses, and so that area, I think, is gonna get the attention first, and then hopefully the vote is going to be to concentrate more funding over at the Central Park area. Because y'all's area definitely has been identified as one of the worst for flooding. If you looked at the maps that we had, that was the big hot spot, was your area. And if not for Zeke here, physically fixing stuff all the time, I really don't know what we would do. As you know, or some of you may know, I know a lot of you here in the audience, I chair the Intergovernmental Flooding Task Force. And what that is you sign up to get some help. I come around, or if I'm the senator for the area, over on the other side of Secessionville, or basically on the other side of Fort Johnson, that's gonna be Senator Chip Campson's area. So if it falls into one of our areas, that senator is responsible for getting all the entities together, all the representatives, local officials, everybody, and they get invited, whether they show up or not. You know, that's sometimes hit and miss, but a lot of times they do. And it's so much easier for us to get things done. Like if I know that your neighborhood really needed all the ditches cleaned out, but it didn't help for DOT to come out and fix something if we weren't gonna get the city to fix their portion. Y'all have 5 different agencies, I think, in your neighborhood. So it's impossible to try and get it fixed if we didn't all do it as a
And they
group.
blame it all on each other.
Well, but so they can't do that when they're sitting there, all at meeting at the same time. And we have accountability, because 3 months later, because I want them to get the work done, if it's within the existing budget, it has to be within existing budget, then I expect them to get it done within 3 months. And we all meet, and it embarrasses them if one entity hadn't gotten their piece of it done when the others have gotten their piece of it done. So that has just been working marvelously until just this past 3 months, when we had a huge changeover in employees. The county lost Jim Neal, the city stole Matt Fountain, but then lost Ryan Dew. So a lot of these people that were my go-to have all switched up. So now we're having to go back and redo the 3 months ago one, and everybody walk it again, and then we'll go report again. But that's the only hiccup that we've had. It's really been working marvelously. But that is for the smaller fixes. If you have a fix, what you're talking about, you definitely need to go to, and I can give you the phone number for it. I just got a new car, I'd have these sheets in my car, but anyway, so that you can sign up for help from the Intergovernmental Flooding Task Force, and that will be taken care of. Also, I spoke with Councilwoman Jackson yesterday, and she told me that they're also going to be starting a campaign for citizen help, for y'all to let us know when you have a manhole that is a problem, and we need to know. We're gonna ask there during the next flood event, trying to get citizens near any manhole to let us know, so that we can come out and address that, because you're right, that's a terrible, dangerous issue. Other things that I'm working on independent from the flooding task force, though, would be to, like I said, try to get funding. I contacted PSD, actually, they were in Columbia this week, to meet with me on other matters, and I brought up this whole issue with the sewage leak. Of course, and I understand their point, they say that, you know, the problem with their system, it gets overloaded during big rain events because the stormwater gets pushed into their wastewater, and then it costs the citizens of James Island who live in the PSD to have to treat stormwater like they would wastewater. It's a lot more expensive process. And then not only that, it overwhelms their system, and that's when you have the leak. And so I also spoke with Waterkeeper this week, and actually I spoke with him this morning, and he told me, and I can't remember his percentage, but it was more than 60%, 60-something% of the time that he tests in that area, it's failing. So the gentleman with the ear infection would not be able to get in his creek, but maybe 30-something% of the time. So it's definitely a bad area that we need to look at. They have asked me for funding for several things. One of them is some type of, it's an inexpensive cover, but it's a manhole. It's a U-shape. I don't know if it goes this way or that way, but it prevents stormwater from getting into the wastewater system, which is good and bad, because we don't want it. Definitely don't want sewage leak, and we don't want the capacity overloaded. But then the stormwater's got to go somewhere, and that's going to be Zeke's problem. Because it's going to be, you know,
It's going to increase the volume of stormwater.
Correct, yes.
Well, can't you write legislation, and I know you're all about home rule, but can't we write some type of legislation, since Trump is trying to take away our clean water? Because you told me to go to Cunningham when we communicated about a week ago and ask them to enforce the Clean Water Act. You remember that?
I told you that they would be the ones that could do
And now
that.
Trump may have rolled that back. So the onus is going to be on the state.
Trump can't do anything by himself. I mean, this is going to be a process, just like I can't do anything
Yeah.
by myself.
So can you, because this new thing that the PSD is going to do to help us, can the state not write legislation that would empower the PSD or whoever it needs to be. I don't know how it needs to happen, but can't you write legislation to allow these folks to have higher standards? Because we're not paying third world taxes like the Bahamas is.
We don't need to allow them to do anything. That's what home rule does. That's what I've been
Well, they're
trying
not
to
doing it. The
explain.
PSD is not
Well,
doing
then
it.
therein lies your problem. If that's your belief, then therein lies your problem, because I do believe as a policy that local government governs best. Because I don't know what's happening in Pickens County, so I don't wanna tell them, hey, you up there, this is how you're gonna deal with your stormwater or wastewater. I don't want them in my area. So that's one of the reasons home rule exists. It's not just for issues like this, it's for a lot of things that truly the local government, and you have a lot more impact and contact with your local representatives than you can me, or certainly than Mr. Cunningham, because you're gonna see them, all over at the restaurants. They only have, I think, 13,000, I think each city council member represents 13,000 people. I, on the other hand, am supposed to be representing 106,000, but because of all the influx of new people, I represent 129,000 people right now. And I don't even know what you're.
Almost 800,000.
Right. So,
What about when the commissioners will tell you that the staff does not listen to the commissioners?
well, then that sounds like a management problem that they need to get a hold of. That's something that, and that's where you get answers at the ballot box, that is where, but as far as what they're telling me, I just want to relay to you, and you may have gotten different answers, because I haven't gone to their meetings, but what they told me is they needed that thing, and they also need, what they really need, and I agree with this, is they need to have some monitoring of their lines, because their lines are old. And so we believe there's some seepage along those old lines, and they need $72,000 for that too, to fix, to help. They're gonna do checks every, I think they have to check 20 times, I've got it written down.
With the smoke?
Bottom line is they're gonna have they need that for employees that are gonna go actually test all along these different checkpoints to determine if there is a problem and whether those pipes need to be replaced. So, that, I do think that at least will help, but then we also need to increase capacity, and that is an issue. So, you want me to stop? Susan?
I just would like to give a comment. What Ms. Martin is describing, where she lives in the town of James Island, or are you in a donut hole?
She's in
Town.
Yes.
That's a PSD issue with that manhole. Okay, the James Island Public Service District services those manholes, services our sewage output, okay? What's happened near you that I'm aware of is there are some new city homes, correct?
Yes.
Okay, so Sandy, while we know there's climate change, we know the rains are getting worse and heavier, we realize all that. This is city.
I do. For some reason, people think it's political. I think
But no, here is the situation. It is the city development on James Island that is overloading the system. 4 years ago, we got the article in the paper that said Plum Island was doing a huge expansion to service West Ashley more, to service all the increased development, huge apartment complex behind the Coburg Cow, on and on and on. So James Island is taking the brunt of all the sewage from everywhere. So they announced that they're gonna buy out the neighborhood and build a giant above-ground line across our marsh to service City of Charleston development. That's lagging, everything's lagging. The PSD's new pump stations and new line is lagging, but the development doesn't stop.
I agree.
So we need a moratorium on City of Charleston, wait, let me finish, on City of Charleston development on James Island, because it's ruining our homes, it's making us sick, and it's got to stop. So we need John Tecklenburg here. Where the heck is Carol Jackson? We've had it. So I guess we all have to go back down to Broad Street, because the new council is gonna help us. Well, look at their donations, and they're not. The builders fund y'all, the developers fund y'all, and it's time for y'all to stand up for us. And it's time for this to stop. And right now, all the developers are rushing to get to TRC, because the second they get to TRC, they are vested. They have an application in. It's got to stop. You've got to get with the mayor, you've got to make it stop.
Okay,
And
so
I'll
let's,
echo that, you know, you're saying that that's Zeke's problem or Shoreham is my problem. I'm sorry, but it's absolute bullshit. It is your problem. It is your district
Miss
and there is
Zimmerman,
federal
Miss
fraud.
Zimmerman, come
Oh,
on now.
don't roll your eyes at me.
Miss Zimmerman, let me
Let
y'all
me
know
ask
your-
you, what are you doing for Shoreham Road?
Cursing at a
It's yours.
representative is disrespectful. That's,
You
I'll
want
just
to
say
have
that.
disrespectful?
No, I'm
You
gonna say
wanna
that
see
to
her
you as
emails
a
that
person
she
that's
sent me?
calling this meeting, it's disrespectful to start using cursing at a representative is
Well, this
disrespectful.
person
Please don't
tells
do that.
me,
Okay, you know that the
Please don't
city
do
of
that.
Char-
There's
no,
no reason
you've
to be
gotta wait,
cursing.
you've
There's
gotta
no
wait.
reason to be cursing.
You've gotta understand.
No, there's
that
no
the-
reason to curse at a meeting
you've gotta
like this.
understand the level of emotion.
I live
That
here
the city
too.
of
I live
Charleston
here too.
sold her house under fraud.
I
It's
live here
in
too.
foreclosure, she's broke,
I'm-
she can't pay her bills.
and this
because of
woman
fraud
sends me
committed
emails
by
that
the
tells
city
me
of
that
Charleston.
I can't
So
have access to
don't
her
ever
and that
tell
I'm
someone
ugly.
not to be angry
No,
about
I'm
that.
saying don't curse at somebody at a public meeting.
That's your opinion.
No, that's the respect that anybody as a human being has.
Okay,
No,
now,
no,
let
You
me-
know what?
if
Respect
I-
is a
I
human
understand,
being.
I
Some of this
understand
is
the, I
human rights
understand the
issues.
motion, it's certainly,
No,
just
I
please.
mean, I'll be
Well,
proud.
the meeting, it
Yeah, let's just,
lowers
let's
the
be, let's
level of
treat each other
Okay,
with
no
respect,
more
please.
swearing.
Okay, so
Anna,
if
no
I,
more
if I
swearing?
can, if I can direct it back up here so I can try to fill y'all in. First, and for those of you who do not know me, let me tell you, I'm living on headquarters, but that's only for about a year and a half. I'm building a house off of Ellis Creek. So clearly, I want to get this thing taken care of. My new house, my dock is already in place, is right where that huge sewage leak that CWS was responsible for. So, and all the sewage from that leak went into my new yard. So I have every motive to try and get this thing worked out. But there are different levels of government, and that's what's so hard for me to get people to understand. I do not control city council. I do not control PSD. I do have working relationships, and that's what we're trying to do with this whole cross-jurisdictional thing, and I think that really is going to be one of the most successful things if we can get it funded. And then and DOT, by the way, I called Christy Hall, and asked her, I said, Christy, look, I'm gonna be making this funding request, it's for a cross-jurisdictional reason. And she said, well, we'll do, you know, we will manage it, but do make sure it says cross-jurisdictional. And I said, well, the problem, Christy, is y'all haven't come in with any money, and all these other locals have. So how about match us or do something? And what she assured me was definitely, she said she'd commit right now to go in and get the stuff underneath Dill's Bluff cleaned out, but that if we show her the study, then she will also take a look to make sure Thomas and Hutton were correct, and let her engineers and hydrologists look at it. And then she would also come to the table with some funding and with some money. That's where I can help. That's where I can help.
Well, you have failed several neighborhoods, I'll just tell you that.
Okay, now let me back up. Ms. Zimmerman indeed had a very bad problem.
It's not my problem, the city made a problem.
Okay,
and
I'm not the city of
representatives are not
Charleston,
fixing it.
and I cannot, unless I pay for your house myself, I can't help you with your problem. And so for yelling and screaming and everything else is not going to be able, and it wasn't the first time, thank you, sir, for standing up for me, but it's far from the first time that she's done this. But I cannot do anything to fix Shoreham Road. That was a true mess up. Those houses will have to be paid for by FEMA, and they need to be sold, and that whole place needs to be wiped down and made a passive park,
And FEMA
or
has
even
said
made
that
a
they
catch
will not pay
basin.
for them, because they're building code violations of the city of Charleston, and that is why there's a federal investigation going on, and your office has been very helpful
Okay,
with
you've
that.
spoken with April there,
Yes, I
okay.
have, and you guys have gotten me information.
So
and,
I hope then that works, that you're able to get some relief that way. But again, I'm at the state level. The state, we are, by the way, we are passing a resiliency fund, and that's already over in the House now. But what that's gonna do is provide low-interest loans. It is not a government giveaway, but it is a low-interest loan process for people that really my heart sings for, because some people can go in when they've had a flood event and they have enough money to get the construction crews in, working right away. They get FEMA out there, and yeah, they can wait, 2 years or however long it's gonna take to get their money back, and they can afford the $5,000 for, deductible. But most people can't afford that. And so what this fund would do, so that people aren't living in mold,
It's $2 million for the entire state, and Horry County has already saying that they want that $2 million allocated.
Well,
So
it's
I don't know
Horry
why we're
County,
talking
and they
about
don't
it.
always get what they want.
Well,
So,
Sandy,
it's for
just seems,
statewide.
you know, excuse me, it just seems like the Charleston legislative delegation is so powerful, or should be. Have you seen other delegations or other counties get state monies for public works projects?
Yes,
Okay, so I heard that Peter McCoy got $50,000 for the Pinckney Park Pavilion.
Right.
I'm not sure that's true.
that is true.
Okay, why would he not get $50,000 for our PSD to
Those
help
are-
fix some of our drainage? I
Those
mean,
are different budgets. Those all have different pockets of money. So he went for PRT, and I can tell you that I am talking to him, but as you know, he's gonna be most likely elevated to the United States.
well, we don't care about
Attorney.
that because he's still in now. He's
Right.
in now,
Right.
okay? So if the legislative delegation can do everything they can, because y'all all love McMaster and he loves you and y'all are all best friends, please get us some money from this massive excess state budget to fix our drainage.
Susan,
To
I
give
think-
it to the PSD,
I
to,
think you just heard me talk about the budget request that I'm making.
for what?
okay?
Which one?
Okay, 72,000 for PSD is what I'm asking. That
For
is-
Dills Bluff Road?
No, that's a different one. That is the whole cross jurisdictional, and I'm asking for $1 million there, which will be matched, but now that doesn't mean I'm gonna get it. To go to the cross jurisdictional task force, so
But
wherever,
who's gonna get the money?
that is gonna depend on which entity wants to do the work.
Okay, the James Island Public Service District badly needs state money to fix our sewage output.
They asked me for $72,000.
That won't
That's
do
what
it.
I'm gonna ask for.
That's
They need 2
No,
million.
they don't know what they're doing. The inmates are ruling the asylum at that place, and you will find that out.
Well, they asked me for 72,000, and I will
will
tell
we
you,
do it?
you talked about our legislative delegation being so powerful. McConnell is not there anymore. Bobby Harrell is not there anymore. So how it works in the House is
Chip
that
Campson?
House leaders can, become leaders very fast, because they're not like us. In the Senate, that's why with no term
They
limits in
don't know what
place,
they need.
we have to take it basically step at a time. So if your leaders are not reelected, then your next new leader is down at the bottom of the totem pole, and it just is a bad process. Chip Campson does have, I think, 12 years in now, but, you know, you're looking at people with 40 years in that have control of finance. Both the current leader of finance, in addition, the Democratic Party chair has 40 years in, and so does Peeler, who's right behind Senator Leatherman. So they're the ones that really have the power. Over in the House, yes, Peter McCoy has a lot of power because he's judiciary chair, and a lot of our bills have to go through judiciary. So he can sometimes force finance decisions because
I have a meeting with him next week.
he can hold up
Okay.
legislation that other people on finance want. So it is a powerful position, but he's about to leave. So, I mean, that's the reality of it. So what I have to do is have a working relationship with my colleagues, and I have to ask them for the money. And they're not gonna give me everything I want. I mean, they're just not. But that doesn't mean I'm not doing everything. I wrote a letter for $200,000 for harbor cleanup, because of all the plastics and stuff that, that are in our harbor. That's what was requested.
That was on Sullivan's Island, right?
Well, those are the nurdles. There's no
Oh.
way for us to clean those up. I'm seeking, DHEC, I've got a bill out there that would give DHEC the power to basically fine and stuff. They say they don't have the power now, I think they do, but, we're working on it to try and fix that. But the plastic, we can't get that up. We can get the, I think the Citadel estimated I can't remember how many tons of, plastics are in our harbor at any given time, so we're getting equipment that would kind of, stop it before it gets into the harbor. Different traps and things of that nature is what we're working on. Both of y'all, he's had his hand up for just a second.
Hi there, my name is Ron Clark. I'm new to the community. I'm with Franny for Lakeside HOA.
Mhm.
But I come from Lifer Terrace, and where I was at, I was living in a friend's house that has been on the market for over 3 years because every time there's a rain, that street floods,
Mhm.
waist level.
Mhm.
I called the city. The storm drain that is there is full to the rim of dirt and leaves and whatnot. I called the city. They said, yes, we will come out and clean it out. showed up.
That's a perfect thing for the task force, for my flood task force. Like, I know you get in two different things. Cross-jurisdictional is, we've got cross-jurisdictional task force, but that's the bigger project where we've done the study and we're gonna get big things done. The intergovernmental flooding task force, that's what I chair. That kind of problem is perfect for what we do. Like I said, every 3 months I'll go walk neighborhoods and have all of them, I feel like the Pied Piper, you know, all the different entities are marching the streets with me, and they accept responsibility and I take notes. So, and then 3 months later, they have to say if they got the work done or if they didn't get it done. So, but now that is all within existing budgets. But, you know, we have a lot of money in the budgets, really, to fix problems like that, but it won't be anything huge like the interjurisdictional group can fund.
Let me clarify.
Yes, ma'am.
I'm next, friend.
I know.
Just for clarification, because I think there's some confusion, at least even sitting here. The 72,000 that you've requested, that's for identifying future projects. If I understood you correctly, they're going to go and travel through these pipes, see where the seepages are, detail and map what needs to be done. They'll need, of course, they'll need more money to
Yes.
fix it. This is just simply to identify the
They will,
problems.
but
And
remember, they've got their own taxing ability. They can set millage. And so, you know, you
Oh,
don't just get to go to the state
gotcha.
and say, fix every
yeah,
little
Uh-huh.
town's problem.
they
I
might
mean,
be passing those costs on along to the
they might,
consumer.
just like, you know, when they
Okay.
needed a new fire truck, and I think it was a
Well,
13%,
It'd be 72,000 less that they pass on to us.
which is
Hope
why.
that
And see,
it's-
that's a
hope it's
reasonable
successful.
request. That's something that my finance members can understand. Okay, they're gonna put these toppers on that's gonna stop wastewater from overdoing the system, and we're gonna identify future leaks. And then they have their own plan and their own amount of money that they're, you know, that they're budgeted to try and fix the things. But they've already identified, I think it was 21 different super problem areas, and this neighborhood being, Franny's neighborhood being just one of the very worst. But they, you know, their algorithm meant that, and they all voted together, which I thought was pretty good. Everybody agreed that it would help a lot more people to fix the whole Dills Bluff area first, and then work on the rest.
If you can't write legislation that would, and the Clean Water Act could go away, if you can't write legislation that would protect us from septic tanks, PSDs, they're perpetrating, and our natural resources are the victim. If you can't write legislation to protect us at the state level, who can?
There is legislation that if we know that a septic tank is leaking and we can identify that and prove that, now that's real hard to do, then there is already stuff that we can do.
It needs to be stronger.
But what I want is for there to be buyouts. Again, it would be a low interest rate loan. It's not that we would give them handouts to get new septic systems, but what we want to do is encourage people to tie into sewer and not have those septic systems, so the incentives are there for them to just, you know, go ahead and cap off their septics, pump them out, cap them off, and then join into the sewer, and I think that would help a lot. So that
We
is
don't even
being-
know where they are, though.
Yeah, we do.
Well, no, I mean, if you meet with the PSD staff, they will give you a map, and with all the little brown squares, they will tell you, this is where we think the septic tanks are, but we don't know for sure. And DHEC only goes back 5 years.
Well, if they're not tied into sewer, they know it, and so if they're not tied into sewer, then they're either pooping straight in their yard or they've got septic.
Well, then that's common sense.
Okay, I've got a quick solution, perhaps. With all due respect, you got very involved in the Riverland Central Park intersection project. I don't know if I'm thanking you for that or not, but obviously for you to pull in Christie Hall, Central Park Road is a state road, correct?
Yes, ma'am.
So you've been very outspoken, you've been very active on that intersection project.
Dangerous intersection, needs to be fixed.
So can you, in conjunction with that, demand a drainage fix at that creek that is literally feet from
the intersection. If you're going to get involved in the half-cent county intersection project, why can you not also get with Commissioner Hall and DOT as our state rep in demanding for us that this has to be part and parcel of it?
Okay, so it's Secretary Hall, but here's the thing, the further we try to widen the cost of a project, the likelihood that it's going to be a no-build. And that area, definitely, we do not want a no-build, it's dangerous, somebody,
Doggone.
I mean, it's just, it's a bad situation.
It's the
But
safest
as far
section
as trying to
in the
tie, a drainage into that particular intersection, only if the engineers say that, and I can't imagine that that's gonna be the situation. We're looking at sidewalks and stoplights and, those kind of
Through the
things.
flooded sewer waters.
Yeah, well, I
is
mean,
what
I
we're
don't, I
looking at.
can't, I don't think I can, you're still talking apples and oranges there, so, but now, Christy Hall, you're right, I have a great relationship with her. She answers the phone every time I call her, and I think she's fantastic. We serve on Palmetto Pride together, we've been working on litter
Okay, well,
efforts
what
together.
my point is if the Riverland Central Park intersection is so horrendously dangerous that it takes state action and state Secretary of DOT action, why is the drainage issue that is horrendous? I know you've seen it. Why is the drainage issue not of priority to you as well?
It is a
And I
priority, which
just am trying so desperately to get these drainage fixes in as part of these intersection improvement projects.
I did not write the funding request for the cross-jurisdictional, help for fun. I did it because it was needed. And you had every level of government, local now, not DOT, but it was county, city, PSD, they all agreed where that money needs to go first. So I've already made my request for the money, and I'm doing my best to get it over there. I'm calling it match money. Usually that kind of helps a little bit easier. If I can get the state convinced that these other entities are gonna match, then once matched, it's just easier to get the
I
funding
mean,
that way.
just as a comparison, the Camp Folly project was huge. It was hugely expensive. It was a county project. Obviously, Folly Road is a state road. What we heard for years and years and years, as that lagged, as that was last in the queue for the first half cent, as we all waited and waited and waited on that is, they have to fix the drainage first. You know, of course, the first time it rained, the whole intersection was underwater. But what we heard over and over is we have to fix the drainage first. So we would just urge you all, on James Island and on Johns Island, the drainage has to be part and parcel of these roadworks projects. And particularly in the area of Central Park and Maybank, the city and many other entities have put their head in the sand going, 526 is coming through here. Y'all don't need to worry about any of this. 526 isn't coming through there for 10 to 15 years.
10 to, now it's 10 to 12, but it's probably gonna be 10, yes.
Exactly what I said, 10 to 12 years. It's gonna go to Johns Island first. They're gonna deal with that end first. So the government's ignoring Maybank and ignoring Central Park and building in that vicinity has to stop.
Again,
And
but
you-
now you're talking to the state level, and that's a local decision, and I agree with you. And I
But
think
there's a
Carol,
state
you
planning-
mentioned Carol Jackson, she agrees with you. She's been working hard to try and change the overall zoning. Y'all may know that because of that awful development that is planned for next to you, the builder has already sued the city, and the city will likely end up having to pay money because there has been such delay, because the developer had rights. And so are we trying to scale those back? The city's definitely trying to scale those back, but it's hard because it's gotta be a comprehensive rezoning, cause it's gonna touch every property.
Who's in
And,
charge of zoning?
The city.
Yeah, the city does that.
But I mean, the
Every-
Wizard of Oz at the city, who are the people?
Let me say
I
something
mean-
there, if I can. I went to a
Eric.
zoning meeting in 1985, when I first built my home on James Island. I went to a zoning meeting for a variance for some sideline issues. The same people that were on that advisory board in 1985 are still sitting there. They're still there. I went to another meeting where they rezoned a single residential lot in my neighborhood to a multifamily and stuck 4 buildings on it in a neighborhood where everybody else had a single residential home. The problem lies there at a state level. Is there some way you can look at these volunteer zoning boards that
Yeah.
these people sit on and say, what the heck is going on, that you're sitting there for 35 years? And,
Do a forensic
and
audit.
they never see it, they never see a zoning that they don't like.
I
mean,
don't,
it's just crazy.
that
A
is
developer they don't
something
like.
that you would think, and certainly could be done whenever, we had the mayor take office same time basically I did. I'm first term, for those of y'all who don't know me. First time I ever ran for anything was this office. So, so the mayor is now entering his second term. He is the one that could get them off of the boards, just like McMaster can. I'm encouraging, trying to get more female participation on statewide
Couldn't
boards.
the state do something like term
That's
limits or
home-
something
that's
like that?
home rule.
Yeah.
That's a violation.
Enforce
of
the
home rule.
planning, why can't you better enforce the 1994 Planning Commission Charter that says that jurisdictions and municipalities will plan for certain elements like traffic and drainage and all these other kind of things in schools. So a kid at Murray Lassane got lost in the classroom because there's 30 kids there. I mean, it's overpopulation. And if y'all are gonna have these state codes and these planning commission charters and all this, why can't you enforce them? Why do I have to prove malfeasance in order for y'all to investigate? I mean, it's laughable to me. It's like,
So now we're talking about overcrowding at Murray Lassane? 'Cause
well,
I-
it's all everything. But I mean, okay, I'm just saying for instance, the sewage in the septic is an issue, okay? That's part of the Planning Commission Charter of 1994. And that's a state charter that
And it was an
allows a
unfunded
planning commission
mandate.
to
It
evict.
was an unfunded mandate, and the state never did give the money to the county to deal with that. And so therefore, the county says, thanks for telling me I need to do this, but I don't have the money for it. And so that's what happens when there are unfunded mandates.
I would just like to switch gears to the federal level. I thought that was what we were calling.
I know, thanks for calling this meeting. Appreciate that.
I thought that we were coming here to talk about some federal strategies. And a suggestion that I might have, I know that, my case is Shortham Road, but Shortham Road exacerbate is like, it's the canary in the coal mine for James Island. And I know that Cory Booker and Senator Menendez have been talking at the federal level about the building code violations that are going on in the city of Charleston. And there have been some federal help, and your office has helped me with that. That James Island, in many ways, is costing the federal government an enormous amount of money in FEMA claims, and the fill and build that's going on here is only going to exacerbate the cost to the federal government, and it will also impact the cost to us with the Risk 2.0 new FEMA maps that are coming out. Basically, everybody that is next to a development that has done fill and build now, that is going to cost the existing homeowner, because they're going to be basing it on LiDAR data instead of firm maps. And so I'm wondering if maybe the approach with James Island, and James Island already is getting quite a bit of attention at the federal level through work with George DeCimos, and there are senators in New Jersey that are looking very, very, very much at the city of Charleston and their CRS rating, and they are basically making videos, writing proposals, these sorts of things, that that it is not fair that New Jersey pays more flood insurance than the city of Charleston does with all of the violations that are going on. And so certainly we have had people coming down here and coming in and talking to us, and I have sent hundreds of emails and been an informant to the government and such. But I'm wondering if Joe Cunningham can take the approach that, he could maybe actually help us on James Island. And it's a kind of a weird way to think that like we have to air the dirty laundry, but it is not working here on James Island, and the existing homeowners are the ones that are going to be saddled with the most debt, with increasing insurance costs into the future, and that we are having on James Island a situation where we are overdeveloping to the point that the entire value of people's their most valuable asset is going to be contingent upon what the federal government will do with buyouts. And as for Shortham, the federal government cannot buy out Shortham because it's building code violations, and that's already been determined. That
they can, because they paid out claims over and over and over again. So
they're
the correct approach for him would be get
cannot.
funding for FEMA, so they can be paid.
They cannot, because it's building code violations, and there are 2 illegal variances. I have hundreds of pages of documentation that they have, anyway, that's a different thing. But what I'd like to talk about on the federal level is that what is happening on James Island